Forum Communications, the producer of this fine podcast, has been publishing and supporting local news across the Midwest for over 100 years, and they have named this week Trust Week. It's a week highlighting all that goes into covering local news to ensure we keep your trust. Local news is one of the best ways to stay connected to your community, so during Trust Week, you can get 50% off a new annual subscription to the Duluth News Tribune. Just visit duluthnewstribune.news/half-off to get this special offer. That's duluthnewstribune.news/half-off to get 50% off local news from local reporters. Hello Northlanders, it's Monday, April 3rd. I'm Wyatt Buckner with the Duluth News Tribune Minute, presented by Minnesota Power Employees Credit Union.
The average MPECU member saves over $785 a year in better rates and lower fees. And with MPECU, every ATM is your ATM. With their free checking program, you get ATM fee reimbursements at any ATM anywhere in the U.S. Check out Minnesota Power Employees Credit Union services online at mpecu.com or visit their offices in downtown Duluth, Arrowhead Road, or Miller Trunk Highway.
Now here's a look at today's headlines. Millions in public funding could go toward reducing some of the taconite industry's most stubborn pollutants. A $20 million request by the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency in Governor Tim Walz's budget proposal would make $17.6 million in grants available to mining companies to install mercury or sulfate reduction technologies, $2.1 million to ramp up water treatment processes targeting sulfate, phosphate, and PFAS developed by the University of Minnesota Duluth Natural Resources Research Institute, and $300,000 for staffing and running the grant program. As the News Tribune reported in 2021, the taconite industry is not on pace to reduce its mercury emissions by 72% by 2025, a state goal set almost 15 years ago. According to plans filed in 2018, the industry has largely said reducing mercury emissions by 72% was either too expensive, not technically possible, or both. Only Cleveland Cliffs North Shore Mining said it could reach the required 72% reduction by shutting down its coal-fired power plant and changing working habits. The mining companies could choose to use the grant money to reduce either mercury or sulfate, or both. Mercury is released into the atmosphere through stack emissions as taconite pellets are fired, or hardened, in the pelletization process, according to a 2003 report from the Department of Natural Resources. But mercury is a neurotoxin that can harm human health even in small amounts, and makes its way back to Earth via snow and rain and into water bodies. It becomes toxic as methylmercury and works its way through the food chain. In 2011, the Minnesota Department of Health found 10% of Minnesota infants born in the Lake Superior Basin had mercury levels above the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency's reference dose for methylmercury. Sulfates, meanwhile, are discharged into water by industrial activities like mining and wastewater treatment and can harm wild rice at high levels. In Minnesota, sulfate levels for wild rice waters should be at 10 parts per million. Now Dan Williamson joins us with a special guest.
Thanks, Wyatt. I'm sitting here with one of our colleagues, the great Jay Gabler, Duluth News Tribune arts and entertainment reporter. And Jay, you have a feature that you're working on that we'll be able to see in Wednesday's print edition of the Duluth News Tribune, as well as online prior at duluthnewstribune.com. It involves a new music school that's opening up in downtown Duluth.
That's right, in the historic Arts and Theater District. It's called the Northerly School of Music. It is run by spouses and co-owners Kyle and Cooper Orla. Now, if that name doesn't sound familiar, it might be because they both recently were under other names prior to their marriage a couple years ago. Kyle was Kyle Ola, and Cooper was Cooper Orth. So they decided to combine their names, and now they are the Orlas, and they have just founded this new music school downtown. It's currently accepting students.
What was your biggest takeaway from this story?
I was interested to see how much demand there is for music education and instrument repair, which is something else that they do through Kyle's instrument repair business, also in this newly occupied space downtown. And it was cool to see how much commitment there is in the arts community to making the historic arts and theater district thrive. You know, Kyle put it well. He said it is a little bit of a weird vibe when you look to one side of the new music school and you see the giant new Essentia complex, and you look to the other side and you see a few burned out buildings. But, you know, Kyle actually spent a lot of time downtown when he was in his youth. He would hang out at the Encounter skate park, where he said he was a terrible skater, but very into the music culture associated with the skate park. And so he's very familiar with this part of town. He grew up in Duluth, and he and Cooper are just very excited to be in this new to them space, teaching music and fixing instruments.
I imagine so. For our audience members out there, what do you hope they take away from this story?
I hope people realize how much opportunity there is for arts education in Duluth generally, the Twin Ports generally, but especially downtown and now in the Historic Arts and Theater District. You've got your music classes now at the Northerly School for Music, and you've got your theater classes at the Duluth Playhouse, and you can learn about film at Zeitgeist. And, whatever age you are, you're never too young or too old to learn. Of course, at the Duluth Playhouse, they've got a lot of great adult education classes as well as classes for kids. We've written about that in the past. And Kyle Orla was telling me that his students right now range in age from, I kid you not, 7 to 75. So if you're interested in music education, there are opportunities for you in Duluth and right now at this new school.
7 to 75. That's great. Jay, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Dan.
And again, you can read Jay's article in Wednesday's print edition of the Duluth News Tribune, and you can also find it online prior at duluthnewstribune.com. Wyatt, back to you.
Thanks, Dan. Now here's a look at your forecast, brought to you by the News Tribune's Northlandia podcast.
Happy Monday, Duluth. Increasing clouds throughout the day today. Temperatures right around 43 degrees and not a whole lot of wind from the west, about 10 to 15. Overnight tonight, thickening cloud deck expected with temperatures falling into the 20s, increasing winds as we head into your Tuesday. We will be tracking a late in the season snowstorm, snow and wind likely on Tuesday, a high of 30 degrees. Could see a little bit of wintry mix, so some raindrops, possibly even a rumble of thunder mixing in on Wednesday. Behind this cold front, temperatures fall just back to around the freezing mark for your Thursday as the system departs the area. Skies will be clearing out to partly cloudy and near 40 by Friday. I'm Storm Tracker meteorologist Jesse Ritka.
Thank you to the Northlandia podcast for their support. The weekly podcast explores curious and unique stories here in the Northland. In the latest episode, arts and entertainment reporter Jay Gabler shows how a fairyland park led to a museum of doll dioramas in Grand Rapids. You can find that episode and more at duluthnewstribune.com or wherever you also get this podcast. Reporting for today's episode was done by Jimmy Lovren and Jay Gabler. Thank you for listening to the Duluth News Tribune Minute. Have a great day, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.